Welcome to Question Coach. This podcast is for you founders, CEO, leaders who make decisions all day, carry pressure and deal with people. I am Audrey Jeanron. I work with leaders who are expected to be confident and in control while handling doubt, overload, conflict, and human complexity. This podcast is about one thing: understanding humans, yourself and others, so you can align purpose, people, and performance. No theory for show, just insights and practical tools to help you lead people, not just systems. Let's get into today's episode. Hello and welcome this week to Question Coach. So today's episode exists for a very precise reason. Over the past years, I've coached a growing number of leaders who all come with the same sentence. They all came with the same issue, sometimes formulated differently, but emotionally, it was always the same question. The question was, I was promoted because I was good at my job, and now that I got the promotion, I'm not sure I'm so good at this new job that I got. So this episode is for you if you recently stepped into a management role, a leadership role, if you moved from an expert to manager role, if you're technically strong, committed, intelligent, and yet something feels harder, heavier, more confusing than expected. This is not an episode about management tools. This is an episode about the transition. Because what very few organizations explain clearly is this: being promoted is not a continuation of your old job, it is a rupture. And if you don't understand the nature of this rupture, you'll keep working harder in the wrong direction. So today we are going to explore three things very intentionally. First, what really happens internally when you move from expert to manager position, and why this transition creates an identity shock. Second, we will see why technical excellence stops being sufficient at this level and what kind of competencies actually replace them. And third, the most common traps new managers fall into, not because they are incompetent, but because they are still operating from the wrong internal reference point. Throughout this episode, I want you to learn something very concrete: how to recognize where you are in this transition and what needs to shift. Keep this question in mind: what am I still doing as an expert in a role that now requires leadership? That's the question for today. So let's start with the foundation: identity. As an expert, your professional identity is relatively clear and stable. You are valued for what you know, for what you do, for what you can do, for the quality of your execution. There is a direct line between effort and result. You do something, something gets done. You fix a problem, the problem disappears. This creates a very strong internal logic. I am valuable because I deliver. So now when you step into a managerial role, that logic quietly breaks. Not because you suddenly becomes less competent, but because the criteria of value in the managerial role, the criteria of value changes. As a manager, you are no longer paid to produce outcome directly by yourself. You are paid to create the conditions under which outcomes happen through others. This is not just a change of tasks. This is a change of professional self-definition. It's a change of identity. Many new managers underestimate this. They think the transition is mostly operational: new responsibilities, more meetings, broader scope. No, in reality, this is existential. It's really fundamentally who you are in the company. Because the question shifts from what do I know, what do I do, to How do I influence without doing it myself? And if this shift is not made consciously, it creates confusion, frustration, and self doubt. What you need to understand here is this: feeling lost or less effective at this stage when you're transitioning from expert to manager, this is not a personal failure. This is quite actually predictable. It's a phase of identity realignment. The learning point is this: before you can learn how to manage others, you must understand that your source of professional value has changed. It's not about what you do, it's how you influence others doing it. So now that we named the identity shock, let's look at the most common misunderstanding that follows it. Many managers I see and I accompany, at the beginning, they believe, often unconsciously, that authority and legitimacy still come from being the most competent person in the room. They think that they have the legitimacy to be a manager, the whole authority to be a manager, because they are the most competent technically. This belief makes sense. It worked before when you were an expert in the role. It was rewarded even. So when things become uncomfortable in the managerial role, the reflex is to go back to what feels safe for you. This is the expertise, the technicity. So you stay close to the details, you intervene often, you correct, refine, you optimize. And for a while, this may work. But slowly, you are seeing a different type of problem. Your team becomes dependent from you. Decisions escalate to you. You will feel overloaded, while others appear disengaged or undermotivated. It's not because your team lacks potential. It's because your leadership style requires actually a different type of competence. Because leadership and management does not require you to be the best technician, the best expert in the room. At this level, your value lies less in answers and more in framing priorities, framing decision, framing accountability. And it requires tolerating uncertainty, imperfection also, and sometimes a slower short-term results, because it will go slower than if you were doing this to-do list by yourself. But in exchange, what you get is the long-term autonomy of your team. So the thing is here that, of course, if you are good technically, you can exert some control, but the leadership competence, the managerial competency is about trust and the structure that you will provide, the frame of priorities, decision, and accountability. So, of course, if you do things by yourself, probably it will get done better, or in your eyes, it will look better. But what you create here is the fragility of your team, because your team will be dependent on you, on your decision, and you will very quickly feel overloaded. So this is the key learning at this moment when you are transitioning from being an expert to being a manager. You have to change your identity. You have to change how you are valued, because your team in that moment doesn't need always your technical excellence. They need your leadership. They need to feel trusted. They need to feel that they have a structure, that they have a frame, that they know their priorities, their decisions are heard. They feel accountable. If you are always the best expert in the room, it's not possible for you to give them the trust and the structure that they need as a team. So this is the key problem that I see for most managers and new leaders. Uh, when they are very good experts, they get promoted, and then they have totally to let go, or partially at least to let go of this technical excellence. And this is not easy. This is not easy because it's not what you know. So when you don't shift this identity from being an expert to being a leader, being an expert to being a manager, you will compensate with some behaviors. And this is where we see very consistent patterns in new managers and leaders. The first trap that you have is over control or micromanagement. It usually doesn't come from mistrust, but from a place of responsibility. You care, you want things done very well, but every time you step in too early, you send a message to the team: I don't believe this can exist without me. I don't believe that you can do as well as I would do it. So this is your first trap, is over control, stepping in too early in the process. The second trap is the hero mode. You carry too much. You solve crises personally. You protect others from the consequences. So you become the hero of your team. The hero mode often feels like leadership, but it kind of prevents others to learn around you. So you don't want also to protect or to save people too quickly, because otherwise they cannot learn by themselves from their own mistakes, and you will step in too early and you will prevent them to do that. The third trap that we see is the famous avoidance of feedback. You hesitate to give clear feedback because you are still unsure of your own authority. So you soften messages, you sugarcoat them to maintain kind of a fake harmony into the group. But we know that leadership without feedback is just managing by hoping that people will get better or do better. So these are the three traps that I see in most managers who are trying to compensating their lack of management, the lack of leadership, when they're still in the role of the super expert. The first trap is over control or micromanagement. The second trap is becoming the hero of the team and saving everybody, solving crises. The third trap is the avoidance of feedback or the sugarcoating to preserve some kind of fake harmony. And here is the part where most organizations that I accompany, they try to skip that. This is the letting go of this form of expertise, because emotionally it's costly. Most experts, even when they become managers, they don't want to let go of this expertise that give them certainty, recognition, and a form of control. Because the leadership competence that will require patience, restraint, and a form of delayed gratification, because the fruit of good leadership are not visible immediately. But the fruit of great expertise are getting problem solved, getting things done. So this is kind of immediate gratification. And most of us, because this is the way our brain functions, we prefer immediate gratification than delayed gratification. So we will choose every time expertise over leadership. The problem is, on the long run, it doesn't work. When you become a manager, you have to go into the leadership mode, requiring this restraint, this delayed gratification. And many leaders say they struggle to trust their teams. Very often, what they struggle with is trusting a version of themselves that is no longer defined by mastery, no longer defined by expertise. This transition asks you to accept a new metric of success. It's not a success that is delivered by you, it's a success that will be delivered by others. So the new metric of your success is not what you deliver, but what continues to function without you. And that is an emotional shift before it becomes a strategic one. If leadership feels uncomfortable, it's not because you're doing it wrong. It's because you're doing something new. And I want to close this podcast this week with a short reflective exercise with you. It's not really a conclusion, it's much more an integration. Ask yourself, what are the tasks I do still perform because they reassure me and not because they serve my role? Where does my team rely on me instead of taking ownership? And which conversation am I postponing that would actually accelerate collective performance? We don't need answers immediately, but what we need today is this awareness. Because if this question resonated with you, and if you recognize yourself, this is the first awareness that you need to accelerate your management and your leadership skills. So there it is for this week. This week we talked about reframing your view on your promotion when you become a manager. You were certainly promoted for your expertise, but you will grow through your capacity to redefine value, your value. And leadership is not about being indispensable, it's about becoming replaceable in the right way. One of my clients told me, I knew I was a good manager, a good leader. At the moment, I was not necessary every day to my team. And this is a key component to good leadership. That shift doesn't happen automatically. It happens when you understand what you are really transitioning from and towards. If you want to go further, you'll find structured tools and reflection here in Question Coach and in our newsletter. So until next time, remember, maybe you want simply to subscribe to Question Coach and you want to subscribe to the newsletter. All the links are included in the description of this episode. You can also find me on LinkedIn. My name is Audrey Jean. Thank you so much. I wish you a very nice week and I see you next time. Bye-bye.